Good afternoon. It's gonna be kind of hard coming off of Riley. You're amazing, girl. Um, hey, so good morning. My name is Jerry Zuniga. I was a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. I entered the Marine Corps in 2005 and was honorably discharged in 2013. I was deployed twice to Fallujah, Iraq, once to Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and well, if any of y'all know anything about Marines, we're pretty elite, right? So we had some pretty crazy training, and before I get into all that, I just want to give you guys a brief background on how I grew up and where I grew up. And like Mr. Irwin, I grew up below the poverty line, South Texas, from a small city called Santa Rosa. Um, broken home, played football, athletics, and I didn't know it at the time, but in high school, we were caught in so much chaos and running around that I didn't realize that at the time medical cannabis had actually saved my life in high school because during high school, my best friend committed suicide. And the only reason I didn't was because I was using medical cannabis. So right after he committed suicide, I joined the Marine Corps. And this was right after graduation. Joined the Marine Corps. 8 months later, from March of 2005, I was in Fallujah, Iraq, right? And Mr. Irwin's talking about beta and alpha. Um, those eight months of training were so intense that my mind was constantly at the beta level, right? I'm constantly at the beta level. I'm constantly in this moment of adrenaline, just ready to react. Okay, so that first day of Fallujah was set the tone for the entire deployment. We got hit. My truck particularly got hit with a pressure plate. IED, improvised explosive device, and that set the tone literally for every day after, for the entire 8 months. So it set the tone, right? So my life had, within an 8 month span, had completely changed. I was in an alpha level state of mind, being back home and calm and relaxed to this constant feeling of a beta state of mind, and I'm constantly in this reaction mode. Uh, when we got when we were in Fallujah, there was a running joke. No one wanted to sit in my truck because we were getting hit so constantly. No one wanted to be in it. But that deployment was a deployment like all the other peers or my peers had been facing. The return home was quite different. We had fire trucks, police cars, civilians at the airport waiting to greet us. It's the most exhilarating feeling you ever have to be able to come back home after not knowing if you're going to live and receiving that type of that welcoming. It's breathtaking. So I get back, and we go directly into another training evolution, and within 8 months, I'm back into the same spot I was, Fallujah, Iraq. And this deployment was a little different. We were more on the offensive position, and we were doing a lot of raids and ambushes and not really taking too much contact. And the return home was the same, right? We got that same feeling. So every time we're coming home, you get the sense of pride. You get the sense of honor that you've had fighting for your country in an environment that was very volatile and unstable. Um, 8 months out there, second deployment, come back, same feeling, and again, I'm having to make a decision whether or not I want to stay in the Marine Corps or get out. And I decided at the time that I wanted to volunteer to go to Afghanistan. So I volunteered another 8 to 9 months of a training evolution, and I was back in Helmand Province. We had pushed farther south than any military unit had pushed since 2007. We received a Presidential Unit Citation for our Afghanistan efforts, combat action ribbons, and just a number of awards there due to the intense fighting that we had in Afghanistan. And this fight was much different than the Iraq fights. This was a face-to-face confrontation. You can see your enemy. Let me catch back up here, people. So getting back, you have this sense of pride. I was now at a point where I knew that I could no longer stay in the Marine Corps due to my state of mind. My constant beta mind, I was unable to focus. I was unstable. I was having, while in the Marine Corps, PTSD, sleep apnea, sweats, but all this was part of the culture, so I had no idea yet that it was PTSD or TBI that I was experiencing. So they sent me to Tactical Training Exercise Combat Group, where I became a sniper instructor. Went to Anti-Tank Training Company. Right after that to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, where I was a training instructor for roughly 214 Marines. That's where I was honorably discharged. I was ready to move back home, ready to get my life started, ready to get this new chapter going. And I had about $10,000 in savings at the time. So in my mind, I thought that was fine getting out. I'd look and secure a job, got out, and I was looking for law enforcement possibilities. So I'm applying to every sheriff's police department from Sacramento all the way down to LA. It's hard, right? Along with that, I was going through, when they release you from the military, there's no platform, there's no format that allows any veteran to transition smoothly, right? It's call this office, go check this website out, give these people a call. You're always leaving offices with a pamphlet full of papers, right, of people that you need to call. So something was clearly wrong. I was homeless, living with my family. I didn't have no source of income, so I was jumping from house to house. Nothing was working out, and I talk about that pride that you have from these deployments. Now, imagine getting home and being homeless, right? Or waking up at 3 in the morning to go cut grapes in the fields. After you had done all this, all right? It's pretty demoralizing. So mentally, I wasn't there. Mentally, I was already in the state of depression, and my environment wasn't letting me transition really into anything better, right? Thank the Lord, my wife, I entered a VA work-study program. I started researching. I started going to every veteran organization, VFW, American Legion, any organization that said they were willing to help veterans. I was at their door. I was knocking. I walked into the VA work-study program. My wife found us a house through the income, and it's really when everything started going downhill. We had our own place, and the stability of my family trying to cope with my PTSD and TBI symptoms was hard, not only on them, but myself. We found ourselves in my room with everyone on the bed, and myself walking from room to room with every single door locked, on watch, basically. And I wasn't getting much sleep at all. I was getting maybe 4 hours of sleep a night, having to wake up for work, sweats, nightmares, PTSD. I mean, everything at home was seriously deteriorating. And like the video says, I won't get into it, but I was in a recliner, and in my room I have a recliner. My family was laying asleep. It was probably 4 in the morning, and I had the gun to my head. Because I needed to change, right? I needed something to change, and I thought that was taking my own life. And when I started doing more research, I started to realize that 20 veterans commit suicide a day. 20 veterans commit suicide a day. At this time, I was on all the VA pharmaceuticals they were prescribing, and I was literally drinking myself to sleep. Any way I could. I was popping pills or I was taking alcohol. Anything to get me to bed. I obviously made a decision for my family to do whatever I had to do to change myself. And I have, the next night I was in bed, and I hadn't prayed since Afghanistan, so it had been quite some time now. And this was this story always gets me. This is the first time I've told this story to a group of people like this, so bear with me. It was the first time I had prayed since Afghanistan. And I was in my bed, and I decided that I would start praying to God. And I started praying. I got this intense feeling of energy. And I know this sounds weird, but the ringing in my ears got louder. And I have constant ringing in my ears. It got super loud, and so I sped up my prayer. I was scared, right? And I started speeding up my prayer. And I say, amen. And the energy just releases, and the ringing goes away. And I'm like, what the hell? I get up, and I run to my wife in the restroom, and I'm bawling, and she can see that I'm in distress, and I'm crying, and intense. I've done a lot of stuff. That's the first time I've ever been that scared. The next morning, I wake up to go to work, and I'm leaning on the shower, and I get this feeling on my shoulders. And I know all this sounds weird, especially if you're not religious or spiritual. I promise this just happened to me. This was never me. And I get this intense feeling on my shoulders to like drop to my knees, and I dropped to my knees, and I started praying. And that night, I came back from work, and I was in my garage thinking about the last 2 days and the spiritual experiences or God experience that I had just had. And I have a 70-year-old man that lives across the street from me. His name is Silvino. And he comes to me, and he says, ¿Qué tienes? What's wrong with you? I said, nothing. He said, stop lying to me. And he asked me if I was hurting, and I said yes. He says that I need to try medical cannabis, right? But he tells me in Spanish, necesita fumar mota, right? And I'm like, no. I'm like, it makes me lazy. I'm not doing it. And he tells me, you're smoking the wrong one, or you're smoking too much. And it changed my route. I was like, what do you mean I'm smoking the wrong one? And he says, you're smoking the wrong one, or you're smoking too much. Within 2 months, this 70-year-old man had 12 plants in the back of my house and was growing each strain for me, right? In 2 months, I have 12 plants in back of my house. This is all new to my family. My family is like, what the heck are you doing, And I'm like, I'm growing. I start doing more research, and I start understanding that different strains work for particular symptoms. And I start doing more research, and I get connected with a fella, Jason, who you all saw on here, and his son, Jaden, was having 777 seizures a month, right? I link up with Jason, who lives about 30 minutes from me, and Jason says, let's help the veterans here. I started a program. We started Tactical Patients, and we started holding events. We started holding just support meetings for veterans just to break out of isolation. But there was a catch. At the end of the event, these veterans are receiving medical cannabis and CBD products to help them transition off of opiates, right? And we started out with about 20 to 30 veterans coming to our meetings. This was back in 2016. We just had our last meeting September 11th. We had 227 veterans at our event because of CBD. So we've built this platform to bring veterans out of isolation and to help end the suicide epidemic, right? Because 20 veterans a day is far too many. And I've had personally three very close friends. Matt Dean from Tyler, Texas, was the last straw for me, right? Because I was there. I was at that point. So I said that we had to make a decision, and thank God that Jason and Jaden's journey came into our lives, and now we're able to impact literally veterans from Humboldt, and we operate out of Modesto, but veterans from Humboldt and as low as San Diego travel to come to our meetings to receive these medical cannabis products and CBD products to help them transition off of opiates. And without CBD and without medical cannabis, there's no way that we would have been able to create this entire platform. There is no other organization or program that is implementing medical cannabis and CBD the way we are. We've gotten so much recognition that Orconia, who operates cold laser therapies for neurology, who holds 16 out of the 18 FDA clearances for cold laser treatments, has been at our meetings and is willing to take a study for PTSD and TBI with the use of CBD. So if I have anything to say, I just like to say Thank you, Mr. Irwin, for this opportunity. Thank you all for hearing our story. And if you have any, I'll say it. I know Mr. Irwin didn't want to say it, but it is a miracle. It is a miracle cure. And there's testimonials all day long in Jaden's journey that people are walking in and out. I mean, this girl right here, like, she's amazing. You know, just to hear her story is amazing. So CBD works. It's helping saving veterans' lives, and it's helped save my life. Thank you all.